Welcome to Breakfast with Bob on triathlete.com. We are here in beautiful Atlantic City on the pier. The first ever Challenge Atlantic City will be happening this weekend on Sunday. And of course, our two-time Ironman world champion wouldn't miss the opportunity to come out and try a new race because he loves going 140.6 all in one day. Mr. Chris McCormack, how you doing, bud?
Really good. It's good to be here. I wanted to be the first this weekend at something, so I'm the first guest on the show.
Exactly.
So I figured it's the first challenge race in the USA, and I had to be a part of it. You know, Atlantic City is somewhere I've never been before, and it's a great turnout for the inaugural event.
What I love is we were talking last weekend, and you're talking about, like, for years when you do speeches and people ask you, they say, hey, Chris, how do I balance? I got a wife, I got kids, I got work, and you would talk to it, right?
Yeah.
You'd say, hey, this is what you do. But you really didn't know.
No.
You had no idea. Now that you're running Tanya Putta in Laguna Phuket, you're running a full-on fitness, not fitness center, but it's like an Olympic training center, and you have a real job. Right? Yeah. Tell a little bit about what your job is.
Well, I'm the executive chairman of Tanya Pura, which is a $250 million sports resort, school and hotels in Phuket. Yeah. And basically I just delegate. I tell people what to do, which my wife said it's the perfect job for me.
Right.
All I've ever done is tell people what to do. But, you know, it chews up a lot of time. And I was only saying, as you said last week, for years and years I've been doing these corporate talks around the world, talking to people about how to balance their life. And it's all about, you know, time management and balance and how you get the training, and it's about setting these goals for yourself. And but I'd never had to work, you know, 40, 50-hour weeks. So any professional athlete out there that you hear tell you that has no idea until they have a job, you know, because you're physically and mentally fatigued from work, and you have, you know, I don't see I'm trying to fit some training in the morning, then I go to work like most amateurs, and then I come home and squeeze some training in the afternoon, and my whole week I'm thinking, oh great, I'll be able to do a heavy workload on the weekend. But Friday comes around and my wife's like, what are we doing tomorrow?
With the kids.
With the kids. Yes. And I'm like, well, I was thinking of doing a 5 or 6 hour bike ride. And you get the look, you know, like it's like, hey, I haven't seen you all week, and
the kids haven't
seen you all week. You're doing something with us. So, you know, basically your priorities change, and, you know, as a professional athlete, you're doing things that you want to do. Training is your job, so you can structure family life around that. But when you add work to the mix, it's a completely different ball game. So professional athletes out there, you don't have a clue.
In terms of real balance, you're finding it out now.
In terms of real balance.
Because it was funny, because we were at the Tri-Rock Philly last week, and you're taking your bike out of the back of the car, and it's like, oh, I really haven't been on this before, right? You have a brand new bike, and as back in the day, there's no way you'd go to a race with a bike you'd never ridden before.
Oh, without question, I would never do it. And the last year I've been talking with Scott about it, and you know, I've always said that no matter what, you know, I'm definitely getting older as a professional athlete, and I'd always be doing triathlon. I'll be doing this when I'm 70.
Sure.
And it has to be a point where your time at the pointy end, you know, comes down. But you can still, my aim is, I remember years ago racing with Scott Tinley, and when I first came to the States in 2000, and this guy was an iconic legend,
of course.
You know, and I remember talking to Tinley about it, and I used to think, this guy's so relaxed. Where's that killer instinct I used to see on television? And he's like, mate, it's all about priorities, man. And I'm really understanding that a lot more now. And, you know, I just enjoy being part of the sport. My aim is to hold a pro license as long as I can, exactly like Scott Tinley did.
Make them pry it out of your cold
make them say,
fingers.
Hey, enough's enough, mate. You know, you've
been here long enough.
You've been here long enough, go away. But I still... You know, I snuck away with a win in Japan, you know, 4 weeks ago in a 70.3, and, you know, I'm still able to win certain events if they go right. But, you know, when you start stepping up to this distance, it's all about doing the work and putting that time aside, and you've got a youthful group of young athletes that have that eye of the tiger that I remember, and, you know, you've got to face that, and the reality sometimes hits you very, very hard at about the 20-mile mark of this marathon.
Well, and when was the last time you did a full iron distance event?
The last one I finished was Ironman Cairns in June of last year, and then before that it was another year. So I've basically done one since 2010.
When you won Ironman.
Yeah. When I won
the World Championship.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been a while. It's been a long time between drinks.
So Have you done a 100-mile bike ride coming into this race?
Next question, no. Well, I figured I may as well save it for race day. I've done a lot of...
See, that's my thing.
Yes.
That's what I've been doing. I've done 600-mile bike rides in my life. They've all been in Kona.
Yeah.
It's plenty.
But you try and find the, I've always been a glass half full type of guy, and I try and find the positive. So I think I was saying to you
You're rested?
I'm rested.
Yes.
And I remember Steve Larson, a few years ago said to me, you don't need to train as much. If you train harder, you actually go better. So I'm sort of adopting a lot of that stuff that Steve learned, that Steve told me, and said, you know what? If I'm going to go out there for 3 or 4 hours on the bike,
hard.
I'm going to go hard.
Yeah.
And, will I be left exposed at the back end of this thing? Maybe. But if I don't, geez, these young guys are going to cop it, aren't they?
Exactly.
A full-time professional age group athlete won this race.
and nobody looks at your training log when they go to give you the prize money, whatever it happens to be. So Dylan McNeese, you know this young man very well. What's he bring to the table?
He's as an ITU athlete, Dylan was left a little bit exposed on the run. He was one of the best swimmers in the world.
Yeah.
He was always been a very, very aggressive bike rider, and he reminds me of a Cameron Brown, even in his technique and the way he races. And Cameron, on the ITU circuit when he was younger, when we were juniors, was not much of a runner. Now, if you look at Cameron Brown now, he's probably the top 4 marathon runners in the sport.
Absolutely.
And I see the same with Dylan. Except you've got a guy who's always going to be first out of the water. He's not scared to go off the front. Every long course race he's done, he's led start to finish, and that's a certain mindset that you get comfortable with. And on debut, he ran a 2:52 marathon. That's
a real deal.
That's a real deal marathon, and he's ducked under 2:50 now twice. So. This kid's solid, and he's going about it the right way. He wants to put some money behind him. He's supporting the Challenge event, so I just hope Challenge spends a bit more time supporting him. He said, look, I've got options, but I want to support these races. I want to go to Roth. I want to win Challenge races, and I'm hoping they give him a start in Bahrain because he's earned his spot. Sometimes I think we forget as Challenge that there are people out there that are supporting our series and saying this is what I want to do and this is where I want to cut my teeth and I ultimately want to go to Kona.
Right.
And so he's learning his craft in this environment, and I think we should support him all the way to Kona because he's a guy that I think when he gets there in a couple of years, if he gets there fresh, could be a top 5 competitor.
So you're doing a camp here besides the fact that you're racing.
All my guys are here.
I see all your guys. Wait, where are the guys at? There they are.
Yeah, they are.
So you got 4 of them doing their first full.
Yeah, the full.
34 campers, 4 relays, 9 individuals.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah.
So you got all those stats, huh?
Yeah.
So when somebody's doing their first one, because you remember, that's scarier than crap, right?
Yeah.
You're going, like this whole week, it's what the heck? What am I going to do?
Yeah, and so we just try to have a bit of a social camp. There's a few racing their first or full, and I think my first one, I've told a few of them this story, and I know you know this story. I waited for that music to kick in, like
in the air conditioning.
In the air conditioning, I was so used to watching these long course races on television, thinking, "Wow, these amazing stories!" Because the TV packages are wonderful, and I know a lot of the guys in the camp have watched a lot of the NBC coverage of this sport, and I'm like, "Hey guys,
there's no music.
There is no music. It's not going to be aircon. It's not a 2-hour package. It's actually you're out there for 15 hours or so. So just take your time, get your food in, and you're going to go through a hell of a lot of emotions, physically and mentally.
Yeah.
And but at the end of the day, just keep pushing forward and get there. It's just a tough experience and something they'll never forget when they hit that finish line.
So, as a guy who's been doing this for so long, when you're with people who are new to it, it gets you inspired, right?
Yeah.
Is it something that this really helps you stay fresh in the sport?
It's what keeps me in the sport. I think I actually got tired of the professional side of the sport, hanging with the same guys, and you're doing this certain circuit that is, you all follow the same events around the world, you're racing the same crew. And
you're sort of insulated.
You are very insulated.
Each other a pro.
Very, very insulated, and you get a bit of disconnected, and it wasn't until I came back to San Diego and Scott convinced me to do a couple of races down there that were just. I think we actually racked together.
We did. We racked together.
Yeah, I put my bike on this rack with a beach cruiser, and
and you with the beach cruiser.
Yeah, I was like, wow. And you get talking to the guys doing this event, and they're as nervous as we are.
Right.
And this is so cool, and I thought this is what I miss because this is where I came into the sport, I needed to go back to really appreciate.
Back to your roots.
Back to your roots to really appreciate how cool triathlon is. It's not. you can get a little bit twisted and bitter at the top end after a while.
But you get involved with the politics and all the rest of it rather than forgetting how beautiful it is.
And it really is beautiful. We were in Philly last week. I did the sprint race. It's Tri-Rock does a great job of a lot of those events.
They're phenomenal races.
Yeah, and I just love getting out there and doing those races. And racing Saturday, Sunday is something I enjoy. I used to do it when I was 18, 19, and why not continue to do it? And, I keep bringing his name up, but as I said, Scott Tinley was doing this forever. And
Melina's still doing it.
And Melina's still doing it. And that is, if you're sick of me already, if you're sick of me now, you're going to get really sick of me because that's me. I'm going to be doing this forever.
I love it. And when you talk about, everything you've accomplished in the sport, and and one of the things we talked about a lot recently was, you talk about how competitive you are, how much you love this. It's killing Lance Armstrong not to be able to do this stuff, right? And have those conversations picked up at all, or has he been too involved with legal stuff?
I think it was the last time on Breakfast with Bob we brought this up, and it triggered a Twitter war, and we were about to have this race. It was fantastic.
I know, it came close.
It came very, very close.
Laguna Phuket.
Yes, we were, and we talked a lot. I know Lance wanted to do it, and I was keen to do it. My demands were it had to be for a charity. No one could benefit, and he was keen to do that. And a lot of people criticised me. A lot of people were very, very supportive of it. I know Lance he's a competitive individual like I am. He made a lot of errors in a lot of the things he did. But I think, when you look beyond, especially in the US, everyone gets a second chance here. And maybe Lance has done too much. But I thought when we discussed this, the opportunity to bring a spotlight on endurance sport behind it, I guess Lance is a villain. And but to do something positive out of that was a good head start for him, a good way for him to say, this is what I did it, because this is why I did what I did, and look, I want to do something good with being a villain. I want to turn things around. Now, other people thought that's not a good thing to do, and that's their opinion, but I gave him that opportunity, and we ventured a long way down a path to ultimately having an event which would have benefited the tsunami victims. I'm living in Thailand now. It's the 10-year anniversary of the tsunami in Thailand, and when you're in a third world country, if you were to raise $1 million or $2 million, we could educate almost 4,000 kids.
Right.
That is real.
It's real dollars.
It's real dollars and real impact. And that's what I thought would be cool. And obviously he wanted to do a lot with his cancer foundation still, with Live Strong, and make a connection there. So we did venture down it. But he, his world's upside down now. He didn't know where he'd be in September when we were looking at the event. And he was open and honest with me and said, look, thank you for the opportunity. And it was a different Lance. It was definitely a different Lance. But
more humble.
More humbled Lance.
So that's still, it's not like it's totally off the table.
I'd like to think it's not. I said that to him straight up, and I said, look, just two guys, we don't need any fanfare. I know.
Do it. We'll go meet in an alley somewhere.
Yeah, like we're 18 again. Like let's just go and have a race and shake hands, have a beer, and say you're better than me.
Right.
As I said, I got a bit rubbed when he came to the sport, and he was just doing what he does, and said, I'm going to win the Ironman World Championships. And
gosh, that sounded familiar.
It sounded very familiar. I can see why I rubbed other people.
No, I'm going to win it 7 times.
I'm going to win it 7 times. Jeez, who would say that?
I don't know. Some real knucklehead would say that.
Anyway, he mustn't know the game. But, I just got upset. And then when he made that statement, post Oprah, that he thought he could have won, I just thought it was disrespecting the Freddies and the Pete Jacobs and the guys that did win. And so that's why I said, hey man, put your money where your mouth is. Like, come on, let's have a go at this. And that was all. It was I just thought, if we're going to do it, we do it something positive out of it. No one's going to benefit, and we just race like two high school guys. And I still watch, and you were around when he was here, when a young Lance, he was an aggressive, talented, all these things you can't deny what he was. And I've always been inspired racing that type of character. Norman Stadler, that type of character.
Alistair Brownlee, that type of character.
Crowe is that type of character on the race course. They are aggressive, confident athletes, and they're inspiring athletes to compete against, because they bring out the best in you.
Last night I was in Chicago at the Hall of Fame, USA Triathlon Hall of Fame, where Mike Pigg talked about aggressive legend.
I retweeted that. Did you see that? I retweeted it. He's doing Chicago, and
so we were actually in the car with Hunter Kemper coming back, and I was talking about what you had done by trying to make the Olympic team again.
Yes.
And Hunter goes, you have no idea how important that was, because a lot of people have looked at ITU racing as it's a swim and a run, and the run times are all garbage, and they're not real athletes. And the amount of credibility you gave to the ITU athletes, because you went in and realized you couldn't play in that sandbox anymore, that you could run 31:30 off the bike and finish 50th.
Yes.
And the Brownlees were different. It's a different world than when you were there.
A completely different beast, and and now I think that credibility, you're seeing a lot of these guys. We're about to see Jan Frodeno race his first full in Frankfurt.
Yes.
And you know, he's the Olympic champion, you know, and we're going to see these guys trickle across. We're all hearing about Javier Gomez, and that talent, you know, you add endurance to it.
Yeah.
And what they're going to be doing in Ironman and long course racing will be remarkable. At this 70.3 distance, I think we're starting to see that with these consistently sub 69-minute runs, which is just ludicrous. And and these guys are, you know, Andy Potts finishing and getting 4th and 5th out of the water behind these guys. It's incredible, and they can ride bikes. And what it is, it's just an era of athletes that have grown up in under Olympic funding. They've weeded out the weaker ones, you know, through that cutthroat Olympic selection policy. And what's left is just remarkably talented athletes that are fast in swimming, fast in biking, fast in running, because they grew up doing this sport. And Alistair Brownlee and Javier Gomez are some of the best I've ever seen. So
a lot of people obviously know Ironman World Championships and very little less. Mm-hmm. And this year is the 30th anniversary for Challenge Roth.
Yes.
And you're a guy who's won that race 4 times and lost in a sprint finish once to Lothar leader. And there's something special about that event. That 5,500 people, 500 relay teams. It's a really unique event. What makes that event so special?
For me, the thing that made that event so special was that I grew up reading about it in the magazine. Yeah. You know, and pre-internet, pre those things, you lived through those magazines. And that race every year became the event that every European idol of mine that I would watch, the Zacks, the Laders, the Wolfgangs,
Dietrich,
you know, these guys would go to this event, post these remarkable times, and you know, you'd get these photos of these thousands and thousands and thousands of people like the Tour de France on these. I said, one day I have to do that. You know, I have to do that race. And I know, speaking to, you know, Lothar Laders, you know, as an idol growing up, and he's one of my good friends now. Right. And he told me the story that for the Germans, it became a point for them that this race was more important for them to win than Hawaii was, because all their sponsors were based there. It was live television, and so, you know, by sheer irony, my career was I was always taking on Germans, you know, whether Faris or Norman, and these events, you know, to go into the Hornet's Nest and race them at home at their biggest event, I always found that thrilling, and it was a race I wanted to do my whole life, so I was hooked on it. You know, and I just, when I won it once, I said, I've got to win it again. I've got to win it again. And, you know, there's so many other events to choose from. But for me, you know, just when you have this childhood, you know, you're drawn to an event. Sure. In the same way I was drawn to a wildflower, I was drawn to Hawaii, Chicago, I thought, mate, if I can put my name on this trophy as many times as I can, that is what makes me happy. It's like Kona. I put my name on the trophy next to Mark Allen. That makes me happy. You know, just because of the respect I have for the guys that came before me. And I said that in my first victory speech, like the Welsh in Kona, to be on this trophy with Greg Welsh, to be on this trophy with Mark Allen. I keep the money. I don't, you know, like.
I'll take the money.
Yeah, you can tell yours. I don't.
It was $1.50.
Yeah. By the time I paid my taxes in the US, I didn't have much left. But it really was, for me, it was, because when you're a kid, you're not thinking of all as you want to be as that person. You don't think, oh, by the way, at the end of it, you get $120,000. I was just like, oh, imagine winning that race.
It's the most important race.
Most important race. So that was the same with Roth. When I first came into the stadium in Roth, and, you know, I've broken 8 hours, something that I thought was just impossible, and I've looked at the clock, and I'm seeing Felix's father, I'm seeing Detlef Colonel, I'm seeing all these people that I remember the photos. I'm like, I've won Roth, you know, and that's why I will go back. I've been back every year since. I'm going back this year to do a relay, and that's why I continue to say that this is one of the greatest events our sport has, and it's a must-do bucket list race for anyone who hasn't done it.
It's interesting, because I know you're one of those guys, obviously you love to win, but you also love a great race. Yeah. And losing to Lothar in that sprint finish, and I still see that photo of the two of you laying on the ground. What do you remember about that?
I remember coming off the bottom section of the run. We were together all day. We had Faris off the back of us. We had another guy, Alex Talbot. Remember him?
Yeah, sure.
And Lothar was panicked because it was a big race for him. He was sponsored by Deutsche Post, and you know, you run along the canal, and we had about. In my head, I'm thinking, you know, it was only my 3rd long distance race. In my head, I'm thinking, if this guy doesn't drop me, I'll beat him in a sprint. You know, so don't do anything. This is one of the greatest, you know, long distance races of all time. He's won 10 or 11 long course races, first man under 8 hours. Just run off his shoulder and out sprint the guy. And so that was my game plan. He kept trying to drop me, and the closer I got, I thought, just hold, wait, and sprint him. But I'd never sprinted at the end of a long course race. You know, I'd sprinted a hell of a lot at the end of, you know, 6 miles, but never. And as we came up to the crowd, anyone who's been, the crowds are remarkable. For the last mile, it's 4 and 5 people deep. And it was a left-hand turn, and you turned right into the stadium, and Lothar was going for his 4th title. He knew the course very, very well. He started to hit the sprint, and I went to sprint, pump the arms, but the legs wouldn't come up. And I remember thinking the whole time, man, he's got 3 metres, run past the guy. But my legs just wouldn't cooperate. I just could not, you know, I could not sprint at the end of a long course race. And it was 3 seconds from 400 metres out. We just stayed 3 seconds apart and came into the stadium. And I remember looking up going, man, he's beat me. I was convinced that I was going to win Roth. I remember in that race thinking, how's Lothar going to... I'm the fastest guy in the world. Like, he's not going to beat me. It's impossible. And he did. So full credit to him. And it's one of those races for that town. It was the 2nd year of challenge.
Yes.
So it was a very, very important event for them, because Lothar was the icon of German racing then. And it was pre-Norman winning his first Ironman World Championship. So he was still sort of the guy, and to have that sprint finish, it got all the TV, and that was the launch of Challenge Family Roth.
Who's going to be the next? You've always been really good at spotting the Andreas Rahlert and Michael Rahlert and sort of the Europeans that a lot of us in America don't know about. Who's the next great athlete's going to move the long course that we're, you know, not quite aware of yet?
We're much more aware now because of social media, but you know, I think we all know Sebastian Kienle. He's got 2 world titles now, so he's not a surprise. I think Jan Frodeno is the guy I want to watch. He's the most professional, probably the most professional triathlete I've ever seen. He does everything right. He's perfect. He's happy to train on his own. He's a hard worker. He's an Olympic champion. Yeah. He's got a talent pool. You know, but my most exciting guys is David House, who's a young French guy. His father is an Ironman athlete. So he was the only guy really on the World Cup circuit that was into Ironman, you know. So I looked at this kid, even though he's a Frenchie, I was like, wow.
So you raced with him in 12,
he got 4th at the Olympics.
Okay.
4th place at the Olympic Games. It was his best performance. He's very, very good athlete. He's been relatively quiet this last few years, but he got into triathlon because his father did Ironman. And so when I came, you know, I'm like, this is David House. He's a good, super talented, one of the best French. He's like, oh, Macca, can I... And we started talking. I'm like, this guy knows his Ironman history, which I liked. And I think when you have an appreciation for the race, you will ultimately get there. You go there on your terms. You don't go there because the sport pushes you there. And I think the guys that go there on their terms are the guys that do very, very successfully. And I think he can do very well. But when Javier Gomez comes across,
it's all over.
It's all over. Forget it.
Yeah, he's the best.
Yeah, he is the best. I think he loves hot weather. He just ticks the box in everything. He's going to swim there. He's a fantastic body. He's got the right body shape.
The heat won't bother
him.
Yeah.
He's done a couple of halves, and it's just been second gear the whole day. And I think he'll be phenomenal. But you know, I'm hoping. I really think the sport needs someone like T.O., another American winner. It's been long enough, you know, and it'd be nice to have an American champion soon, and then, you know, have a war. I think that there needs to be a sort of in that bubbling phase at the moment that they're trying to create some rivalry somewhere, because Pete's coming and then Freddie's come.
Yes.
We need an American or someone to come, and then we can start to create a rivalry pool there, and that'll be the next wave of champions.
So Tim O'Donnell is working with Mark Allen, and Mark helped you at one point. What did he bring to the table for you, and what's he going to help him with?
I think Mark brings you for me, it was a person I could really listen to, because I respected immensely as an athlete. And I think what gives Mark an advantage over, and I've never worked with Dave Scott, was he had failures. And I think when you look at an race like Kona, unless you failed there, you don't really understand that side of the puzzle. And so when we talked to Mark, I didn't talk about his successes ever. When he was giving me his advice, he was always talking about the failures. This is what I learned. This is what I learned. This is where you... And I could relate to those because I'd failed.
Right.
you know. And when you've got someone like Dave who just won, you know, they just win. It's like Crowe, they just win.
Yes.
You know, they come at it. Sometimes they don't grasp what it's like to not win, and how you deal with that and what went wrong. And you know, a lot of people think, oh. So I think Mark brings that perspective to Tim. He brings a different angle at it, in the sense that it's about, you don't need to win an event with the biggest knockout punch. You need to slow up your training a little bit. For me, in order to run faster, I needed to learn to run slower. That was his advice.
Yes.
Or I would go with my watch and run these long runs at a certain pace because I felt that this was the pace that would win me the Ironman. Mark's like, hey man, take the watch off, run really, really slow, learn the Phil Mathotone method.
Yes.
Burn fat, learn to burn the right energy sources, use fat as an energy, and these were things I'd never addressed. And I just thought hard training, get a result, but smart training, get a result. And I think Mark will bring that little bit of difference to T.O.'s to workload that I think could see him very, very successful this year in Kona. I think Mark's a very, very smart guy because of those things. He's the greatest ever, in my opinion. People will argue, but no
question.
Yeah, he's the greatest ever, and you know, you have that. He has this ability to communicate, you have this level of respect for the guy. When he talks to you about hurt, you know he's been there. You've seen it.
When you talk about blowing up,
when you talk about blowing up, he's been there. When he talks about more so how he mentally fixed that for himself. Because Kona, you know, I said it to Caroline, who I'm working with. I said it to James Kunemer. I've said it to a lot of these athletes. You know, you're already ready to win Kona. You just got to get your head right, and Mark will fix his head.
Love it. Mac, thank you so much for all your time. Best of luck on Sunday.
Cheers.
In that really long catered workout.
Yes. What time's the sunset?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to get you a little glow stick.
Okay, perfect.
It'll be fine. First race with the glow stick.
First one with the glow
What
stick.
a round of applause for Mr. Chris McCormack, because we have an audience out there. I love that. Again, we're at Challenge Atlantic City. This is Breakfast with Bob. You're watching it on triathlete.com. Hold on. We'll be right back.